Hi everyone and welcome back to Inim's World, to part 2 of the project management Q&A. If you haven't watched the first part, go and watch that. I covered all the beginner questions from how to kickstart a project, what qualifications that you might want to get into, and how to transition from some of your current roles into project management. Today we'll go a little bit deeper into confidence, interviews, and some of the things that people are always too scared to ask or even tell you about. Let's jump straight into the questions. So question number 1. How do you overcome the fear and doubt of feeling you might not be good enough? Ooh. If I'm being honest, this is something that affects most project managers and even the senior ones as well. So first, it's important to understand that imposter syndrome is normal. And all it means is sometimes you'll feel like you're not qualified enough or experienced enough, even though you actually are. So the first way to overcome it is focusing on your competence. That means learning the basics of project management, and that is your planning, your risk management, organizing tasks, and most importantly, communication. When you know the basics, you automatically feel more prepared. And the next thing is to celebrate the experience that you have, even if it's not a PM titled role. If you've organized a project, coordinated tasks, supported a team, or even just solved problems at work, that essentially is project management. I've had it personally at times earlier in my career when I felt I couldn't or I shouldn't be in a particular role. I remember when I got my first project management role, I shocked myself because I thought I was not going to get it. But as I started to sort of build on my knowledge of project management and know what to do and what not to do, so learning my basics, like how I communicated, I kid you not, the communication that I have helped me, because even if I didn't know what I was doing, the way I would communicate with my colleagues or my manager or my stakeholders, you would never know. So I would hone in on what you do know and focus on those basics. So knowing how to plan, knowing what risks, how to identify risks, talking in that language will focus more on your competence, and the confidence will come after that. And finally, just take action even if you feel unsure. Confidence doesn't come before you do something. It comes after you've done something multiple times. So don't wait till that perfect point or where you feel like you're ready. Just start small, build momentum, and your confidence will just grow naturally. Let's go to question 2, how to prepare for PM interviews. Now, I did touch on some tips in part 1, so make sure you watch that video as well, just to piece some of what I've said there and what I will be talking about in this question to give you a full picture before you go to those interviews. Preparing for project management interviews is less about memorizing what your answers are and more showing up of how you think like a project manager. So the first thing to do is understand what the job description tells you. They'll usually list things like stakeholder management, communicating, planning, and or risk management. So let me just explain these very briefly. Stakeholder management, it just means communicating with people that are affected or involved in your project. Risk management means just identifying where things could go wrong and planning how to reduce the impact. Once you know what they want, prepare real life examples. And those could be an example of when you've organized a piece of work, a time that you've dealt with a difficult person, or a time where you've solved a problem. Now, one thing I will say, and is what a lot of recruiters or interviewers are looking for, is using the S.T.A.R method. The S.T.A.R method is an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. So we'll start with situation. What happened? What was the issue? Then we'll go into the task. What was your responsibility with that particular issue? And then we'll go to the action. What actions did you take? And then the result. What was the outcome? So if you're able to use the S.T.A.R method, I've always said this to people, it's like you're telling a story. When you're telling someone a story, you go through what happened, what you did, what the actions you took, and then what the end result was. Tell a story, because people will draw to you if you're telling them a story, rather than going situation. This is a situation. This is the task. Talk through it and let it run smoothly like a story. They'll be more attentive to listen to what you did, how you did it, and what the outcome was. Try it, practice it, even to yourself. That will build your confidence. So if you want, you can lay out what the issue was, go through it over and over and over again. I kid you not. Practice, practice, practice. That will give you the confidence so that when you are sitting in front of those interviewers, you're not making things up. You are just using your experience and you're just turning it into a S.T.A.R method, into a story to make it more engaging for the interviewer. So that will take us nicely to question number 3. How do you talk in the language of a PM? So talking as a project manager isn't about sounding fancy. It's about being clear and structured. So here are some common terms that you will hear in project management. And I think I also mentioned it in part 1 to start speaking in this way, using these terms, but before you start using them, understand what they mean. So the first one is deliverables. Deliverables basically just mean the things that your project will create. So for example, a report or a new system. And then you hear things like timeline. Essentially that's your plan, showing you when a task starts, when it finishes, what's dependent on that task, etc. So that takes me nicely onto dependencies, and that's tasks that cannot start until a specific task is completed. An example is you can't paint a wall until the plaster is dried. That's just an example. So the painting of the wall is dependent on the plaster drying on the wall. It's just an example. Another word is risks. That's when things might go wrong later. And then you have issues, and that's problems that are happening right now. When you learn how to use these words correctly, your communication becomes clearer and more professional. So instead of saying we're waiting for someone, you can say there is a dependency on the design review, and once it's approved, we'll move on to the next step. So that's the same message, it just shows structure and understanding. So practice these terms, understand what they mean, and over time, speaking like this will just become normal. So we'll go to question number 4. How do I get started and take the leap? Taking the leap into project management feels big. I know it felt big for me, but when you break it down into steps, it becomes a lot more easier. Step 1, start with what you have. Use project skills in your current job. Organize tasks, create small plans, track updates, communicate clearly. Then step 2, update your CV and your LinkedIn. And I mentioned in part 1, use project words like coordinated, delivered, tracked progress, supported project activities, engaged stakeholders. This helps recruiters see your potential. Step 3 is apply for stepping stone roles, and these could be PMO assistant, project support officer, or project coordinator, even assistant project manager or junior project manager. And then the 4th step, I mentioned it in the previous video as well, get an entry-level qualification. And depending on the career you want it to go down, Prince 2 Foundation is a good one to start, CAPM, or even Agile as well. One is enough just to get you started. Once you've taken these steps, you've officially taken a leap. So we'll go to question number 5. How do you land your first role without titled experience? I've answered this question a little bit before, but most people don't start a project management role with the title project manager. You land your first role by showing that you're doing the work already. Employers look for 4 main things. They look for organizing, communicating, planning, and problem solving. So you want to show examples from your current role or past roles where you've demonstrated those 4 skills. So for example, if you've tracked tasks, that's project monitoring. If you've organized handovers, that's coordination. If you've solved the problem, that's issue management. If you followed up with people, that's stakeholder management. None of these require the PM title, just PM skills. And once you showcase these skills, employers feel confident giving you your first PM role. So that takes us nicely to the last 6th question of the project management Q&A. And this one is about IR35. So can you explain IR35, umbrella companies, and taxes in simple terms? Absolutely. IR35, umbrella companies, and contractor taxes can seem very complicated. So let's break it down in plain English. IR35 is a UK tax rule, and its purpose is to identify if you are truly self-employed as a contractor, or if HMR sees you more as behaving as an employee. So here's what these 2 categories mean. If you are inside IR35, HMRC says you are working as an employee and you'll pay tax like an employee, and you can't take advantages like paying yourself through dividends. Now, if you're outside IR35, HMRC then sees you as a genuine contractor, and you can operate through a limited company, and you can pay your tax yourself efficiently. So now let's talk about umbrella company, because this confuses people so many times. An umbrella company is a company that employs you on paper when you're a contractor inside IR35. So they take your pay from the client, then they pay your taxes, your NI, and then they pay you the salary. So if you hear that a role is inside IR35, then you must use an umbrella company. And all it simply means is you'll be taxed as an employee, And then the umbrella company will handle all the taxes, national insurances for you. And plus you don't need to open a limited company. Now, if you're outside IR35, you would have to set up a limited company and you would get paid through that limited company. And this gives you more control and you can be more tax efficient. But this also comes with admin and responsibilities. So what I tend to do is I hire an accountant, and that accountant will just do all the taxes for me, make sure I'm paying the right taxes, and then I don't have to worry about it. But again, it's similar as if you were inside, you would have an umbrella company, or if you're outside, if you don't know how to do your taxes, I would recommend getting an accountant to support you to do that. So just to summarize, inside IR35 just means umbrella company and employee tax, and then outside IR35, limited company and contractor tax. And just a quick disclaimer, this is not financial advice. Always check with a qualified tax professional for guidance on your current situation. And that brings us to the end of this project management Q&A. Thank you so much for sending all your questions in. I really enjoyed answering them. And I hope both videos gave you more clarity and more confidence on your PM journey. I'll be doing more specific project management topics in coming videos. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and you turn the notification bell on so that you get notified anytime I post. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.